going live, and we're on the air. And this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. I'm Ed Dyer from sweltering Connecticut. Joining me, also from probably sweltering Finland, is Jani. How you doing, Jani? And also joining us from apparently sweltering Arkansas as well is AJ.
Hello.
AJ, you made the ultimate sacrifice. You turned off your AC.
I did. It's feeling at the moment. It's around 75 degrees, so I'm feeling pretty good.
That's not bad. We're up in the 80s here. So not too bad at all. Got a bunch of exciting science stories. Particularly, I really like the first two we'll talk about. One dealing with a guy who's paralyzed. He was paralyzed in a diving accident. And it's Ohio State University, and they've developed an interface, a bypass actually. It allows the brain to bypass the spinal cord and move. He can move his fingers. We'll also have a video we can share. And you can buy an exoskeleton in the United States. Get yourself your own mobile exoskeleton. And of course some space news as well. So in fact, there's breaking space news. NASA's Low-Density Supersonic Decelerator, it lifted off, and then parachutes were deployed, and it landed. It landed in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know if they've been able to recover it or not. I want to screen share it. That's what the guy looks like. And that's going to be used to create a softer landing. It's going to decelerate, then it's going to hit a certain speed, go back up and back down, and it's going to provide a softer landing for the space vehicles. And let's see. Yeah, well, they don't tell us when. I think it just happened a couple of hours ago. The test vehicle for NASA's Low-Density Supersonic Decelerator, it did lift off from Pacific Missile Range Facility in Hawaii. Actually, it said standard time would be 11:15 a.m. That's when it went off. And there's a picture. It's a picture of the parachute that was deployed and our little vehicle. It's the first of 3 missions that will determine the flying qualities of the test vehicle. And in one of those test flights, they'll also have an inflatable device and a mammoth parachute, an even bigger parachute. After liftoff, the LDSD slowly float upward, taking several hours to reach an altitude of 120,000 feet. At that point, the balloon will release the vehicle, and its rocket will kick in, boosting the craft to an altitude of 180,000 feet. When the test vehicle reaches 180,000 feet and is traveling at Mach 3.8, it will deploy the first of these new technologies, this new donut-shaped tube called the Supersonic Inflatable Aerodynamic Decelerator. It deaccelerates the test vehicle to approximately Mach 2.5, and then the mammoth parachute, the supersonic disc sail parachute, will deploy to a controlled impact about 40 minutes after being dropped. And it was successful. It would be kind of nice if they could, come on, if they could retrieve the vehicle. They don't have to But I don't know.
I'm not sure about that.
It looks, I mean, they have a picture of the balloon with the craft below it. So I would say, unless it sinks, unless it's going to sink rapidly, that would be my guess. They'd have a chance at recovering it.
Yeah,
Save a bunch of money.
Yeah, JPL. There's a cool video on YouTube NASA Edge put up. Maybe I can share the video. It's a really neat project. It reaches like Mach 3, Mach 4.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a reusable thing. I think they're supposed to be experimenting on it so they can land things on Mars.
Right.
So,
yeah, they want to, that's exactly right. Slow down and make it a much more controlled landing.
Right. So I don't know if we'll be able to retrieve it from Mars, but once we get there, someone could.
Yeah, it's going to be a Martian artifact, that's for sure. Someday ancient people will come across this artifact on Mars and says, what the heck is this? These people rafting on Mars. There must have been water on Mars. There must have been rafts, whitewater rafts on Mars. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a little demonstration of it on YouTube there. It's a pretty big spacecraft.
Yeah, it's
But I'm glad it was successful. I think they're gathering data on it right now.
oh. And wasn't there was also an Orion spacecraft that they were testing that had a parachute system, and the parachute system also safety deployed?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was in Spaceflight Insiders. Might have been Amy who wrote about that. So you can say what you want about our rockets, but our parachutes work great.
Oh, yeah. NASA's, it's the Orion spacecraft. The EFT-1 test flight is scheduled for later this year. And I'm really hoping I can make it to that.
That'd be neat.
It's a pretty important mission. They're going to be hoping to reuse that for the SLS rocket system. So they're going to test fly it. I think it was scheduled for mid-fall.
Mm-hmm.
I'd really like to make it down to Kennedy for that.
Yeah, there's it's interesting how accessible NASA has always made our launches. I can't think of any that were top secret that they didn't allow anyone to watch or anyone to.
You wouldn't know about it if they did.
That's true.
They do that all the time. There was a lot of controversy about the SpaceX one a couple of weeks ago because they didn't want to broadcast it, and they always broadcast their rocket launches. So people were thinking they were doing some kind of secret mission.
That's a commercial, right? Commercial spacecraft. Isn't it?
Well, yes. NASA contracts them though, so they could be under some kind of embargo. secrecy.
Okay.
Even the rocket launches, I've only seen one. They have secret payloads that they don't talk about.
Oh, the payloads, sure. With the satellites and things, yeah, spy satellites, absolutely.
Mhm.
That is kind of ironic. If you have an American space spy craft being launched with a Russian rocket.
Well, not anymore. Russia is not going to cooperate with us anymore on rocket launches.
And that's what they say. Got a little story about, well, that's a quick story, so I'll jump to it right now. It is, if I can find it in my old cheat sheet, there's an article in the New York Times. And this was yesterday. Russia abruptly, it says, cancels its rocket launch. The long-awaited inaugural launch of a new Russian space rocket, the Angara, was abruptly canceled on Friday just minutes before takeoff, the Russian Space Agency reported. The decision to abandon the high-profile launch prompted our friend Vladimir, the president of Russia, the Vladimir Putin, to order that officials provide an explanation. Don't want to be the guy who has to go into the room and explain to our friend Putin why they didn't launch today. I guess they call it the Roscosmos. That's I guess the equivalent for NASA. The Roscosmos tentatively rescheduled the launch for Saturday afternoon, which is today, and it's going to be 3:15 p.m. Russian time. I don't know when Russian time is versus Eastern Daylight Time. It's been developed for more than 20 years, since shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It is intended to become the primary vehicle for Russia's unmanned space missions and to secure the independence of the Russian space program. That is the key. Crucial benefits for Russia. It can be launched from within Russia itself, a place called Plastek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They call them Cosmodrome. Something or other Cosmodrome. And that's now in one of Russia's neighboring countries, Kazakhstan. They've got a long-term lease with that country, but of course they want to have their own facility within Russia. And it's also manufactured entirely by Russia, potentially reducing its reliance on foreign rocket technology, especially from the Ukraine. Russia and the Ukraine not getting along together quite so well.
No.
Russia's space program has suffered several humiliating failures in recent years, many involving the existing generation of Proton M rockets. And the latest setback, a Proton M rocket carrying a sophisticated communications satellite, crashed last month shortly after takeoff. And I'm guessing a few heads rolled with that one as well.
I tweeted them on Twitter. I watched the International Space Station Translates the Sky last week at the International Space Station Research and Development Conference, and they were talking at the conference about NASA Veggie, which was an experiment where they're growing lettuce up there hydroponically, and the Americans aren't allowed to eat the lettuce, but the Russians are eating it up. So I tweeted about that. Strange that we can't eat it, but the Russians will.
I don't know for a fact, but I don't know that their grocery stores have the variety of foods and all that stuff available, fresh, maybe not. Particularly, one of the new Russian countries, one of the countries that was created after the collapse of the Soviet Union, was maybe Georgia. It was always called the breadbasket of Russia. It's not part of Russia anymore. Plus the fact that you think of all the homemade vodka that the Russians drink. If that stuff doesn't kill you, then nothing's going to kill you. So I don't think they're too worried about it.
I think that vodka probably kills any bugs that you got in your system.
That could be. Moving on to, which was my favorite story of the week, about that device that allowed the brain to bypass a guy who is paralyzed because of a diving accident. And when I'm finished here, we've got a short video on YouTube that AJ will share with us. The guy's name is Ian Burkhart, a 23-year-old quadriplegic from Dublin, Ohio. The first patient to use NeuroBridge, an electronic neural bypass for spinal cord injuries that reconnects the brain directly to muscle, allowing voluntary and functional control of a paralyzed limb. And he's the first of a potential 5 participants in the clinical study. It's much like a heart bypass, but instead of bypassing blood, we're actually bypassing electronic signals. And this said by Chad Boughton, who's the research leader at BATTELLA. We're taking signals from the brain, going around the injury, and actually going directly to the muscles. The NeuroBridge technology combines algorithms that learn and decode the user's brain activity and a high-definition muscle stimulation sleeve that translates neural impulses from the brain and transmits new signals to the paralyzed brain. In this case, Ian's brain signals bypass his spinal cord injury and move his hand. He was paralyzed 4 years ago in a diving accident. And this was an FDA-approved clinical trial at Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center. Initially, it piqued my interest because it's science and it's pretty interesting. I realized, you know what, it is the way it is. Very amazingly healthy attitude for someone who's paralyzed. You're going to have to make the best of it. You can sit and complain about it, but it's not going to help you at all. So you might as well work hard, do what you can, and keep on with your life. Collaboration began 2 years ago, and during a 3-hour surgery, Roselli implanted a chip smaller than a pea into the motor cortex of Burkhart's brain. The tiny chip interprets brain signals and sends them to a computer, which reconnects and sends them to the high-definition electrode stimulation sleeve that stimulates the proper muscles to execute his desired movements. Within 1/10 of a second, Burkhart's thoughts are translated into action. The surgery required the precision of implementing a microchip sensor in an area of Ian's brain that controls his arm and hand movements. And this is early stages. It's really a first step because you really couldn't do much more, as you'll see in the video. Kind of move his fingers up and down. But it's a pretty amazing first step. Want to show the video?
Yeah, let's see if this works. Just hit push to talk if you have any comments. Once we can skip the ad. Can you see it, Ed?
That is.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is. And that's obviously a first step. And even then, you could see he could almost pick up a spoon. I don't know how long it's going to take, but you know, I will guess in another they get more participants to the program. They'll make improvements with every time within 5-10 years. I'll bet you within 10 years, Ian will be able to do something reasonably normal, even if it's just picking up a spoon to eat or whatever. A big thing is going to be getting rid of the thing on his head, so that you know, the chip that they plant in his brain can go directly to the sleeve without going through a computer. I'm sure that'll happen.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that was just some kind of monitoring device to check the implant.
They're doing so much. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, even the last couple of years, what people have been able to do for those that are blind or those that are deaf, any kind of impairment.
Yeah, I can't imagine the overwhelming joy he must have had for moving his hand for the first time since I don't know what the accident was, but it just make him so happy to be able to do that.
Him and his father, his family. Imagine what they were thinking when it first happened. The things that guy has to struggle with.
Yeah.
And to see a moment like that, that's really, can't think of awesome. Awesomest. Awesomest to the 20th power. I got another awesome story talking about technology that's advancing at a very rapid pace. I'll screen share so that you guys can, skipping the ad, and see, once I figure out, the old man figures out the technology, here we go. I need a brain interface. There. The Rewalker. Now going on sale. A motorized exoskeleton designed to help paralyzed people walk again just earned the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval. It's the first such device to do so. It's called the Rewalk. Straps on a user's body and helps those with certain spinal cord injuries to sit, stand, and walk. Users have to wear a backpack to carry the Rewalk's computer and battery. They also have to wear a wrist device with buttons to tell the motorized legs when to stand up, sit down, or start walking. But it's not like users are punching every step of the way using that wrist controller. Rewalk legs also respond to movements of the user's torso, so that leaning forward triggers a step. The new FDA approval means Rewalk's maker, the Argo Medical Technologies, can now market the products in the U.S. Over the past few years, Argo and other companies that make similar products have tested their exoskeletons on people. And Argo has previously sold Rewalk devices to rehabilitation centers in the U.S. But the FDA approval marks the start of sales of Rewalk devices to Americans for private use. Each device costs $65,000 to $80,000. The FDA announcement about Rewalk details what it is and isn't cleared for. It's approved for specific spinal cord injuries, but it's not recommended for people with other severe neurological injuries. The FDA also says users should undergo training, yeah, big duh, before strapping on the device, and should also have a helper for the user, a spouse or a home health aide. Interestingly, the announcement also says the device isn't for climbing stairs. I gotta believe it can climb stairs with some maybe minor tweaking.
Mm-hmm.
The agency reviewed a few studies of the device before offering its approval. They had 30 volunteers altogether and assessed how far users could walk using the rewalk, how they fared in crowded places and on uneven surfaces. In one study of 12 volunteers, all were able to walk 50 to 100 meters without help. And it's the first company to get FDA approval for an exoskeleton.
We're seeing a lot more of these exoskeletons being developed, and I'm glad they're getting put to good use.
Yeah, and I remember 5 years ago watching someone with a similar exoskeleton walking. I think he was maybe an army guy. Maybe an army guy had lost limbs in the service. I don't remember exactly what it was. A little bit different kind of an injury. But he had to walk very, very slowly. In this case, it looks like these people can walk at a reasonable pace.
Mm-hmm.
And work. Can't quite hear you. Yeah, you're still a little scratchy. I think you look at how far they've come in 5 years. Just think how far they're going to be getting in another 10 years. Yeah. At some point, 10 to 20 years in the future, people with spinal cord injuries will be up and walking around.
Absolutely.
That is amazing.
And it kind of relates back to the story we just spoke about with moving the arm with your mind. I don't think people will need to wear one of these wristbands. They'll have an implant, and they'll be much lighter, made with better materials, and have greater mobility.
Yeah.
Help people's lives.
Amazing progress in really pretty short period of time. I'm sure, like they say $65,000 to $68,000. Now, I'm going to guess people will have support systems of some sort that they will be able to raise the money. I don't know how many of these they will have available production, whether it's 100 or it's 1,000. I don't know. They'll build as many as they need. There's so many things. Geez, a woman a person being able to perhaps walk on stage and get their diploma from a college or a university, taking part in a wedding ceremony, just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Getting to walk down the aisle with your wife, soon to be.
Yeah. That's a challenge I have never and will never experience. That's way beyond my emotional capabilities. Jani, our friend Jani, posted this just before the Hangout began. And it's a really neat graphic for the Rosetta Space Mission. Alright. So, let's see. I'm going to play it from the beginning. And this is a little bit psychedelic. Don't want you to get dizzy. but really an amazing graphic. It's moving around, shows its yearly progress.
It looks like it's using Earth's gravity to slingshot out. Mars.
Flew by Mars. Earth flyby 2007. An asteroid flyby.
I think NASA announced they had a new candidate for an asteroid capture.
Yes, they did. They did. It's going to be on hibernation for a while. Arriving at a comet sometime in 2014.
Well, that's too soon.
Getting close to the sun. Stay away from the sun.
Well, if it wasn't for the sun, we wouldn't be able to see the comet's tail.
What is the mission? And it might be Rosetta Stone, where they're looking to land on an asteroid or land near an asteroid, and there's a craft, might be Rosetta, might be another one. They're altering, that might be too much of a strong word, but they're altering its path in some way so it gets closer to a particular asteroid. I don't know if that's...
Their mission is to observe the comet's nucleus and coma from close range and measure the increase of the cometary activity during the perihelion, the position closest to the sun. And it's going to deploy Philae to make the first controlled landing on a comet.
That would be amazing. A controlled landing from millions of years away, millions of miles away.
Yeah, and going millions of miles an hour. I know we've sampled the dust particles in comets before, but I think this will be the first time we've made a controlled landing on one.
And that's the first stage. It's kind of a test, landing on an asteroid to landing on Mars. It's kind of a test of that landing system, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, quite a bit of difference in an asteroid and a comet. So this is really exciting.
Is it an asteroid or a comet? I wasn't paying attention.
Oh,
it's an asteroid, I thought.
No, this is a comet.
A comet?
Yes.
Landing on a comet.
Here's the link to the mission.
Okay. Well, they've got to be obviously very clear on the composition of this particular comet.
Yeah, it says the Rosetta Space Mission seeks to see if Comet C-G can provide a key to deciphering the origins of the solar system and/or life on Earth. So that's why they named it Rosetta, going back to the Rosetta Stone that helped us decipher the ancient languages.
So this is not the mission to land on. This is a mission to fly nearby, and it's already.
Yeah, this is the primary mission. I'll screen share here.
It is actually going to land. Hey, yes, it is. It's going to deploy. It's going to deploy a package, PHILAE, that will make the first control landing on a comet. So it's going to fly by and then deploy.
And then it has secondary goals, and what is that? 2 asteroids, the Stens and the Rutiate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to put Mars also and check out its gravity.
Let's see, got a little Wikipedia link here. Screen share, if you're doing the same. There's a little picture of that Thea. That's a European Space Agency lander.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, collaboration, very important. It weighs 100 kilograms. No, the launch mass, I'm sorry, the payload mass is 21 kilograms.
It'll deploy harpoons to anchor itself. That's pretty neat.
So much space news happening every week.
All the time.
Another story, and this is from Spaceflight Insider. And this is talking now. Man, I really, really hate articles that any kind of science article that uses the word magic. But that's what they're calling this little island that they've. And this is on Titan, Saturn Moon's Titan. The odd feature dubbed Magic Island was first seen near the shoreline of the sea, Ligeia Mare, in radio images taken by the Cassini spacecraft in 2010, July 10th, 2013. Ligeia Mare is the second largest sea on Titan. The island was not seen on previous flybys. But when that was intriguing enough, but when Cassini looked at the same spot a few days later, it was gone. Magic. It disappeared just as mysteriously as it had appeared. Scientists involved have postulated a few different theories as to what this phenomenon might be. It's not actually an island. As Jason Hofgartner, astronomer and lead author of the new paper, Magic Island is a colloquial term that we use within the team to refer to this. It's not actually an island. Rather, it's proposed to be something floating on the surface of the sea, such as a chunk of methane-ethane ice, similar to icebergs on Earth, and it might even be a chunk of organic material which is widespread on Titan. Had not realized that there were chunks of organic material floating on ice on Titan's seas. Or perhaps something like rising bubbles coming up from a volcanic vent below, or waves on the surface. An increase in solar energy might be involved, since Titan is now approaching summer in its 30-year seasonal cycle. Titan is basically halfway between the vernal equinox and the summer equinox. It's roughly equivalent to what we would consider the beginning of May, said Hofgartner. As Titan approaches its summer, more of the sun's energy is being deposited in the northern hemisphere. The possibility of methane, ethane, icebergs on Titan seas and lakes has been discussed before. They can float when the atmosphere is warmer, but sink when it's cooler. Organic material, if left denser than the surrounding liquid, would also float. Although Titan seas and lakes for the most part are remarkably flat, waves have sometimes been detected which can glint in the sunlight, even under Titan's thick atmosphere. Any definitive answer will probably have to wait for a flyby mission. So,
yeah, when I first read this, it really caught me off guard when it said it might be a chunk of organic material which is widespread on Titan. Well, definition of organic is relating to or derived from some living matter. Living, live. that would indicate that we know that there's living material outside of Earth.
That definition of organic matter, I think, must be something slightly different. Yeah, I mean, it says organic. Let me see.
Organic. Relating
Let's
to
go
an
to the. Let's see if I'll do a
living
search. Let's see, organic, floating mass on Titan. Life on Titan. There we go.
Well,
The first thing we see is life on Titan. Let's see. I'm going to try this one. Organic. No, I'm not going to do that one. That's a paper. Many bodies in the solar system display low albedo materials. These materials, evident on the surface of asteroids, comets, Kuiper Belt objects, and their intermediate evolutionary step centaurs, are related. Now it says in this paper, micromolecular carbon-bearing materials such as polyic aromatic hydrocarbons and organic materials such as methane and related light carbons. Well, that all raises the possibility of life, organic material, hydrocarbons, some form of life.
Yeah, the only difference between, well, there's a huge difference between Earth's atmosphere and Titan's. It's mostly methane. So, you know, biology on Earth is what causes organic production here. So, what's causing organic production on Titan?
What about, I'm thinking, you have those life forms living in deep sea vents, and they're living off the chemical reaction. It's a chemical reaction, a mix of chemicals that are spewing out of the vent. I don't know if that it's different. It's not getting energy from the sun. It's using a different form of energy for its food, but it is chemistry.
Right. We know that there's some sort of activity on the crust or in the core of Titan. We've always thought that that was one of the good candidates for life in the solar system. Hope we get some more information on this soon.
Yeah, well, think of in a couple of years when these space vehicles do their closer flybys. Good grief! Think about in 10, 15 years, how much more we're going to know. Practically everything we know now will probably, you just have to, erase all and start new books, new science books or something.
Rewrite history.
Rewrite history. Happening as you live. And I will be around, I'm sure, in another 15 years, so that's amazing. And you think of, okay, what little, back in the, when I went to school, the last science class I had was 1961. And what was taught in the textbooks way back then. In fact, what was taught in the textbooks in the 1970s even, what Carl Sagan knew, compared to what we've been learning in just the last 5 or 10 years. Absolutely amazing.
Well, we've actually noticed, we've known about the organic materials on Titan since 2005, so it's almost been 10 years. I found an article on phys.org talking about it with the Cassini flyby. Good stuff.
Hydrocarbons containing as many as 7 carbon atoms were observed, as well as nitrogen containing hydrocarbons. I was saying the nitrogen and methane in Titan's atmosphere are expected to form complex hydrocarbons. Wow.
Yeah, we're still finding out a lot of information with the Cassini pictures and instruments. It's surprising it's taken this long to go through all that data.
I mean, you know, imagine when we find that first life form, whatever the heck it is, even if it's a little microbe.
Yeah, very possible how life started here on Earth.
The odds that there isn't life have got to be about 1,000,000 to 1 against. There's got to be life somewhere out there. It's whether it's somewhere we can reach, I guess, is the question.
That's right. It's almost impossible for there not to be life elsewhere.
It's just chemistry, and we've got this chemical reaction on Titan. Well, we don't know if there. Well, Mars is a more dynamic environment as we learn more about it.
It was more dynamic in the past, I believe. It's kind of a deadish planet at this point since it lost most of its atmosphere.
Yeah.
But,
and AJ, you had a couple of stories thinking about a neat cave.
Of the Hypogeum. There was a neat conference that happened. It was this old cave they found. Where was it? It was on the island of the Maltese Islands, I believe. Yeah, Maltese Islands. They discovered this place in 1902, and it's kind of like a burial site, prehistoric. Let me share my screen here. And what they found was the acoustics in this chamber, this hypogeum, would have the possibility to alter the consciousness of the mind without use of drugs, like 4,000 years ago. And they call it superacoustics or acoustic archaeology. Let's see, screen share. Ancient man used superacoustics to alter the consciousness. And parentheses, possibly speak with the dead? Question mark. A prehistoric necropolis yields clues to the ancient use of sound and its effects on the human brain activity. The researchers detected the presence of a strong double resonance frequency at 70 and 114 hertz inside the 5,000-year-old mortuary temple on the Mediterranean island of Malta. I don't know how to pronounce that first character of the H. The Hal-Salfini Hypogeum is an underground complex created in the Neolithic Stone Age period, and it's a depository for bones and a shrine for ritual use. The chamber, known as the Oracle Room, has a fabled reputation for exceptional sound behavior. And during testing, they said a deep male voice tuned to these frequencies stimulated a resonance phenomenon thought to throughout the hypogeum, creating a bone-chilling effects. It was reported that the sounds echoed for up to 8 seconds, and
Wow.
archaeologist Fernando Coimbra said that he felt the sound crossing his body at high speed and leaving a sensation of relaxation. And when it was repeated, the sensation returned. And he also had the illusion that the sound was reflected from his body to the ancient red ochre paintings on the wall.
You know what I sense with that? A new machine to get us to relax.
Well, that would be.
Let's run out and get the patent right now.
I'm sure there's somebody studying that. Ancient populations were able to attain different states of consciousness without the use of drugs or chemical substances. So that's really neat. I think I have some sound clips here somewhere. Archaeoacoustics. Let's see if we can hear some of these.
We're in the so-called Oracle with these remarkable remains of red ochre on the ceiling, but what's particularly curious about this room is that the natural echoes have actually been deliberately contrived in certain areas. There seems to be a very conscious effort to produce certain effects, particularly with the carving out of this niche.
So yeah, that's a example of one of the sound clips they had. They have a few on this website called archaeoacoustics.org.
That's meditation.
Right. But they're using chambers and the resonance and different frequencies 5,000 years ago, which is really neat. And there's other examples of chambers like this that we've found.
That deep vibration sound. I've had neighbors. With the is that when like when the bass is really way up on a sound system? Oh, that's not very relaxing.
It was a well, that concerns me a little bit because it said it was sound in a baritone range of 70 to 130 hertz, and I'm a second or third baritone, I remember from choir, so I hope my voice doesn't create these resonances for other people and make them their brain activity altered.
You're going to chill people out. Don't expect a lot of applauding and hand clapping.
Yeah, it says in a clinical neurophysiology unit in Italy, they had volunteers Each volunteer has their own individual frequency activation, always between 90 and 120 hertz. The volunteers with a frontal lobe prevalence during the testing received ideas and thoughts similar to what happens during meditation, whilst those with occipital lobes, which I believe is in the rear part of the brain, had prevalence visualized images.
Visualized images?
Yeah.
That's freaky.
Yeah, it's a little strange. So depending on, what each person's activation frequency would be, it stimulates a different part of the brain and you get different results, whether it be sound or visual alterations in your perception. It's amazing what sound can do.
That is very strange to me. Obviously, anything affecting the brain can cause sound and images, but deep oscillations causing some people, to see images?
Well, yeah, and there was a painting on the wall that the scientist said he felt that the sound was coming from, or it was coming through him to the painting. Very odd. Well, they even say extraordinary, strange, perhaps even weird and otherworldly.
That's nice.
Jani
is telling me that our friend, I sent him an invite.
Ulysses.
Oh, he's in Science Island. I sent him an invite. Let's see. How can I communicate? Our own little communication. Let me go to Science Island. All right. This is live on the fly. Let's see if I can communicate. Communicate with our friend. Now, what is going to happen? Okay. I'm going into the chat area to see our friend Ulysses. Are you in there, Ulysses? Jani is in here. Ulysses is in here. Hello, Ulysses. Would you like an invite, or are you indisposed, shall we say, and you don't really want to take part visually?
He's just trolling us.
Is amazing communication. Here we go. I am now talking to Ulysses. Well, I'm texting with Ulysses, who is in Virginia. He is thinking. Okay, I don't think he wants to partake. He's here in spirit. Okay, moving on. Maybe Jani can let us know what Ulysses wants to say, if he has any interesting ideas in our chat area.
Yes, I can touch on that other story real quick because it's pretty short. There's some pretty big news this past week about the FAA banning the use of drones to deliver packages, which is kind of important since Amazon's had some big plans to deliver packages to customers, eliminating the use of mail and making it quicker for people to get their packages. It says the FAA made it plain this week that Amazon, or anyone else for that matter, won't be able to deliver packages using a drone in the near future. In a document soliciting feedback regarding drone policy, a notice of interpretation with a request for comment, the FAA calls delivering packages to people for a fee a non-hobby or recreational-based drone activity, and as such, the FAA wants it banned. A recent court case set the FAA back regarding its wish to ban commercial drone usage in the United States. The agency is appealing that ruling. There might have been an Amazon loophole in the proposed rules, however, because of the Prime members on Amazon, which pay a fee to get free shipping. So it could get around FAA's language. But there's an interesting footnote to the delivery comment. It says the following. If an individual offers free shipping in association with a purchase or other offer, FAA would construe the shipping to be in furtherance of a business purpose, and thus the operation would not fall within the statutory requirements for recreation or hobby purposes. Surprising? No, but it's almost fun to see the government be so particular in its language. So that's pretty strong language, I would say, because there's so many uses outside of a hobbyist for drone use, like archaeology, or say a farmer is missing some livestock. There's so many ways that you can use drones outside of just being a hobbyist, and you would almost have to derive some money from that to pay for drones and the equipment and the expenses that incur.
I'm assuming it also allows drones for scientific research. They use drones for surveillance, for instance, even for forest fires and natural disasters. They use drones. So I really see no practical way that they can prevent someone from using a drone unless it's at a height that somehow interferes. If somebody spots a drone near an airport and they're able to find out who that person is, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But
yeah. Well, there's actually a case fairly recently here in my state. There was a really bad tornado that almost obliterated a town, and a guy used his drone to go over and take some footage of it, and he sold that footage to one of the local TV stations, and the FAA came down on him really quick. Because he sold his footage and he used a drone to do it. It's just really disappointing that they're eliminating a way for anyone else to make money except for surveillance. Because there's so many reasons we're going to be using drones in the future.
People are using drones all the time.
Well, yeah, anybody can use a drone. You can't.
And if, for instance, if I'm a company and I create a fleet of drones that I then sell to fire departments, police departments, emergency medical personnel, and they're using the drones to, in effect, save lives, I can't imagine the FDA coming in and saying, well, you can't make a profit off that kind of an operation.
Well, if you're selling it to the government, then it would be fine. But if you're doing it for commercial purposes, it's a no-no. So an individual can't do it. But they do support companies selling it to the government.
I don't know. Well, I don't know how the FDA works. FAA, excuse me.
I read
FFA. But often before a regulation goes into effect, it's opened up for public discussion.
And it mentioned that. It said soliciting feedback about the drone policy.
And particularly if people have applications, even if they're making money off them, where you're talking about possibly saving lives, certainly, well, I guess science. Drones are used all the time in science research. So, I don't know. It's got to be really hard for the FAA to implement that policy, and my guess is it's only designed really for the big companies like Amazon.
True.
They even got to bother going after someone's phone. Oh, it's just a safety issue. Safety issue is different.
There's a lot of security concerns.
Well, like the police. Again, it's the police, so that's not going to be a problem.
Government.
But, I mean, if you got a choice between using a drone or a helicopter, you got to use a drone. I would think. Save a bunch of money. Drones, you got to have good control over the drones, but they can fly in between buildings. They can go places that helicopters can't. I guess you need that big light that can shine down. I don't know what kind of light you can get out of a drone. And I guess really battery life. Battery life is probably the big thing. That's right.
No,
A drone's battery life might be not long enough to let you chase after a car or something.
Oh, they got gas. Well, the drone I touched up in at Wallops, it doesn't run off of batteries. And they don't need big flashlights. They got infrared cameras, FLIR.
I don't know.
Just the fact that I can't start a business based off of drones without selling it to the government is very disappointing.
I wonder what reaction there will be in Congress, if any. Particularly if the Republicans gain control of both the House and the Senate, which they have a reasonable chance of doing in this next election coming up in November. And Republicans don't like government regulations. They're not fans of the FDA, the FAA, and I think it is certainly possible if companies like Amazon, and if there's a large public feedback against the FAA, I can see Congress stepping in and passing appropriate regulations or whatever.
We'll find out.
I've got another interesting story, possible breakthrough for stroke injuries, stroke victims. Do you have anything else you want to go over, or something more you want to talk about, HA?
Let's move on.
Okay. And let me dig out my cheat sheet here. Get organized, Ed. I had this planned out. I had everything, all my stacks of paper, all lined up. And now everything is in disarray. Oh, well, I'll read it from the article itself. And this is from the U.S. Southwestern Medical Center. A drug that blocks the action of enzyme CDK5 could substantially reduce brain damage if administered shortly after a stroke. And the findings were reported in the Journal of Neuroscience. If you inhibit CDK5, then the vast majority of brain tissue stays alive without oxygen for up to an hour. The results tell us that CDK5 is a central player in nerve cell death. If we can block CDK5 in patients who have just suffered a stroke, we may be able to reduce the number of patients in our hospitals who become disabled or die from a stroke. While several pharmaceutical companies worked to develop CDK5 inhibitors years ago, these efforts were largely abandoned since research indicated blocking CDK5 long-term could have detrimental effects. At the time, many scientists thought that adherent CDK5 activity played a major role in the development of Alzheimer's, and that CDK4 inhibition might be beneficial as a treatment. Now, based on this guy, Dr. Bibb's research, and that of others, CDK5 has both good and bad effects. While working normally, CDK5 adds phosphates to other proteins that are important to healthy brain function. On the flip side, researchers find that adherent CDK5 activities contribute to nerve cell death following brain cancer and can lead to cancer. Good grief. CDK5 regulates communications between nerve cells and is essential for proper brain function. Until now, the connection between CDK5 and stroke injury was unknown, as was the potential benefit of acute CDK5 inhibition as a therapy. Now, the researchers, they administered CDK5 inhibitor directly onto dissected brain cells after adult rodents suffered a stroke, in addition to measuring the post-stroke effects on the CDK5 knockout mice. We're not yet at a point where this new treatment can be given for strokes. Nonetheless, the researchers hope to bring us a step closer to developing the right kind of drugs. First, we need to know what the mechanism underlying the disease before targeting treatments can be developed that will be effective. As no CDK5 blocker exists that works in pill form, the next step will be to develop a systematic drug that can be used to conform to these studies' results. Currently, there is only one FDA-approved drug treatment for stroke, and that's a clot-busting drug, TPA. Other treatments include neurological procedures. So what we're talking about is really learning more about a possible drug treatment. Obviously, because of potential side effects, they're years away from probably years of treatments on mice before you even get to a clinical trial, because there are such adverse effects. But you're learning more about how this particular inhibitor works.
All right.
Okay. What's your choice? Death or Alzheimer's? And you know what? A lot of people in my age bracket, they'll go with death.
Well, if you had Alzheimer's, you could forget about death.
With Alzheimer's, the biggest impact is on the family. That's the big one. The individual themselves, and I know, in fact, a friend of mine developed it 2 years ago. Real problems for his wife.
Mm-hmm.
He went into a healthcare facility and he passed away about 6 months ago. Now, to him, obviously, he doesn't know. He wakes up, you know, he does stuff, and he doesn't really know. Sometimes he remembers, sometimes not. But when you, I know people, I know I have friends in their 80s, and the reason why I say they would choose, and they've said it, they would choose death, is because of their concerns about the impact it would have on their family.
Mm-hmm. Right, it really takes a toll on the family, because you're going to take care or go to visit this person that you've known your entire life, but they have no recollection of you. It's got to be very sad. I haven't experienced it myself, but I know they're making great strides in that area.
Yeah, it's something like what we're talking about with the CDK5 inhibitor. They know it works, or on mice. There's strong indications it could be helpful. It's the after effects. It's the other things, such as causing brain death, brain cells to die. It's hopeful. It's their learning. There's another example, another thing we can get off into, which is people talk about the ethical treatment, the ethics of testing drugs and things on animals as opposed to testing them on people. How could you possibly test this? Even like, how could you even go to a clinical study and say, okay, you'd have to, one, induce a stroke. Someone would have to volunteer to be willing to have some kind of a stroke induced on them, then have this inhibitor used, and then see what the effect is?
No. Well, you can't go to a mouse and ask them if it remembers you, you know. But there are ways you can find out if you have the predisposal to Alzheimer's. With these, you know, even the home tests that you can get and swab your mouth and get your DNA analyzed. They have markers that show if you're predisposed. So if you were, you could go ahead and volunteer for those types of experiments.
Yeah, it's
much like you know, organ donors.
Yeah, you've got to have your first step in these kinds of experiments. Really does have to be with something like a mouse or something else, not a human. Absolutely no way. And okay, then I know there's monkeys, and there's been a lot of controversy about performing experiments on using monkeys. The thing there is, of course, monkeys are closer to man, which is the exact reason why you'd be performing an experiment on a monkey in the first place, because they're primates like we are.
Right.
I don't know. I would still allow some experiments. I would still allow performing an experiment for some kind of drug treatment, let's say, for cancer cure. I would allow that on a monkey first before I would offer it for human volunteers.
Yeah, that's a really touchy subject. I don't know how to respond. There's a lot of animals that have very close DNA with our own, not just monkeys, but pigs, and I think I heard like carrots have a large amount of DNA that's very close to ours.
Test on vegetables. I'd be all for that.
Right. I'll have to try and find that
Which we're
article.
doing with GMOs. And I use Ulysses on our Science Island chat room. That makes him very happy. But talking about it. Where do you stand, AJ? Genetically modified crops, genetically modified critters, genetically modified mice, bees.
Well, I don't know. We do share 50% of our DNA with bananas. Well, you know, a lot of, if you want to talk about evolution, is, you know, we are kind of genetically modified by different things in the environment, breaking the DNA chains, and it causes mutations. And it wasn't someone actually modifying us, but you know, that's how evolution kind of works, is mutations in our DNA. Modified crops, there's good and there's bad. It really takes looking at it in the long term to see how it impacts the earth.
Yeah, where you have to be careful with genetically modified crops is being able to control the area they're grown in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult. You know, you do it so that you have a plant. The plant absorbs the pesticides. The pesticides. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Plant absorbs the pesticide as opposed to the pesticides going into the soil, I think. Good grief. I don't know. Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. The mind is going.
Right. What did Ulysses say? We should test on humans. It's no worse than the war or anything else the nation does. Nothing else, Ulysses? I don't know. I think we really run into an issue where you genetically modify a crop that is possibly a flowering crop, which you know, a lot are, and then all of a sudden, you know, the bees can pollinate, or you know, there's just lots of chain reactions that happen.
We need Ulysses. Ulysses is an expert on this subject. Genetically modification. I mean, every crop we get in the store is genetically modified. So it depends on, you know, what it is. I certainly agree with. Well, for instance, would you walk into your supermarket and you see your can of beets and it says GMO on it? Would that bother you? Would you buy that? Or would you buy another can that doesn't say GMO on it?
Well, all cans are modified, but I don't know. I really need to look at more research into it. You know, we have like seedless watermelons and watermelons. You know, we can do that ourselves without getting into the genetics of the plants. Just like breeding dogs, you know, you selectively, you know, pick the ones that are, you know, they're more fluffy. When you get down to the molecular level, it kind of toying with some things that, ethically, I don't know where I'd stand on it right now. But
Yeah.
if it's
The
healthy,
biggest problem is getting, in my opinion, getting adequate testing.
right?
And
You need something.
we have our FDA. They don't have the money to do their own testing. So it's the chemical company that does the testing, and then the chemical company submits their study for review by FDA scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And that can work fairly well. That's peer review, but it's not the same thing as the FDA doing their own studies. You have the whole thing with bees, where 5 or 6 years ago, based on the studies they did, you had these neocyanids were not really a problem, so the FDA claimed. Now you have more and more research that says yes, it does. It does create a problem. It is contributing to colony collapse disorder. And so now the FDA says they're going to retest it, but they're not going to be able to retest it, or they're not going to be able to have tests performed by chemical companies that they can review. It's going to take a couple of years, and you really need that information on a more timely basis, and it really should be the FDA doing its own clinical studies.
I absolutely agree.
Is there any others? I had some other stories.
Seems like we had another YouTube video.
We did. That's a funny little one. This is talking about a gravel battery. Let me talk about that. Let me dig out the story. It's in our friend Tree Hugger. And I don't know where it is. Okay. From Tree Hugger.
I have it here. I'll throw it in the chat. Right?
No, you don't have to screen share. Well, you're going to show the video. I don't think you really need to screen share this one. Son of a gun. Okay. I edited it. There's a company called Isentropic, and it's based in England, and they're developing an energy storage system using gravel, or more precisely, the thermal mass of small rocks. Now, Isentropic is working on a heat pumping system that uses gravel to store thermal energy and then extract it back when required. This would mean that when the renewables are producing a surplus, that energy can be used to run the system one way, and when there's a defect, a deficit, the system is reversed and turned into an energy source. Now, here's the claim. The beauty of such a system is that it doesn't require a specific type of terrain like pumped hydrogen. There's big hydro dams. It's more efficient, they claim. They claim that the system has a round-trip efficiency of between 72 and 80%, which would compare favorably with about 74% for pumped hydro. They said the cost would also be a little bit cheaper, spread out over 25 years. It'd be $50 per megawatt hour, and as opposed to for hydro, $65 for megawatt hour. The real question is it competitive with liquid metal batteries? And time will tell. So play us the video, please, AJ.
All right, here we go.
storage in the world.
Okay. Seems like Ulysses wasn't able to hear the sound from the video.
I think what happens is, most of the time, the people who are watching can't hear the sound. It's only the people in the Hangout itself that hear, I think.
Okay. Well, it automatically.
Actually, no, that's wrong. Because I know in the This Week in Science show, they do play YouTube videos, and I can hear the sound.
Maybe
So
I
I don't
just
know what the problem is.
mute my microphone during the playback. Sorry, viewers. That. It's really cool technology.
Yeah, it's the whole idea there is cheaper. You're talking about rock. You're talking about gravel.
And density and pressure. And it made a lot of sense to me because I deal a lot with that with my turbo system. Because the denser the air is coming in, the higher the combustion. And actually measure the boost in the car via bar. So 1 bar, 1.2 bar. And that's kind of how I adjust how much pressure is going into the system. But doing it with gravel, that's pretty cool.
It's the issue is storing energy. Like with solar power or whatever. I mean, you can get it, but then you need to be able to store it for when you need it. And there's also, and that's the next story. Here we go. And here we're talking about something called solar thermal power. And this is something I found in Ars Technica. And with the cost of photovoltaic devices and wind power dropping dramatically, the economics of some forms of renewable power are becoming increasingly compelling. Because these sources of power come with a significant limitation, intermittency. Solar can't generate power around the clock, and outputs drop during cloudy days, while wind power can suffer from low output that can last days. There are various types of ways to work around it. Grid scale storage and careful watching of supply and demand. But some degree of what's termed baseline power is, of course, needed. There are ways to provide baseline power that don't involve significant carbon emissions, like nuclear and hydropower. But these come with their own set of issues. A couple of researchers, they got together and they've looked at what's termed solar thermal power. And CSP involves the use of mirrors to focus sunlight into a liquid, rapidly bringing it up to an extremely high temperatures. The resulting heat can be used immediately to generate electricity, or some fraction of it can be stored and used to drive generators later. Depending on the details of the storage, CSP can typically generate electricity for at least 8 hours after the sun sets. Some plants have managed to produce power around the clock during the summer. The researchers, they looked at 3 possible scenarios. Flat power demand, one based on the European Union, where demand peaks in winter evenings, and one based on California, where demand peaks during summer afternoons. And they looked at 3 different ways of plant optimization. Not all optimization of layout and equipment based on economic considerations, and a regional optimization. In the last case, the layout of multiple sites are coordinated in order to provide baseline power output. According to Wikipedia, in 2012, concentrated solar power plants generated a total of 1,553 megawatts worldwide. There's a Wikipedia article. Let me screen share. You can get a little look at. If you can see it, and that's what a plants look like. You got your big tower and thing, and the light is being focused on solar power plants.
Can't see the plant there.
It's probably because of the left side of the screen, and I don't know how to move it. Well, let me see. How's that?
Yeah, you can see the top of it there.
Much better looking.
Yeah, I'm sure some people have seen these before. Here's a little view from the top down. I don't know if it's the same side or not. Oh, there we go. You can see it.
That's from the article.
It takes up so much room. That's my only concern.
Well, my concern would be the amount of power itself. Would it really provide? Well, again, you could, you build enough of these to equal the power that can be generated, let's say, by a nuclear power plant. A nuclear power plant would seem to be the best option.
Right.
And we've discussed this before, and us or anybody with an appreciation of science and the science that's available about nuclear power plants, nuclear power should be done, is the #1 way to go, I think.
The most efficient.
Short term. In the long run, however, you can't get any cheaper than sunlight. So, we have to continue to work on ways to develop solar power. And I think for local communities, and there's this plant in California, so if you've got a local community, and depending on the cost, of course, it might actually be better for them to build something like this, or to build a solar power farm of some sort. And that for a local community might be better than nuclear power. But nuclear power is the only way to go when you're talking about a nationwide network of power plants. If you're talking about that baseline power,
yeah,
it's really going to have to be nuclear power plants.
I think you're right. It'd be great if we could have personal nuclear power plants. Voyager is already outside of our solar system, and it's not a huge spacecraft, and it's running off of nuclear, and it's still going. 44 years later. If we can have something that size in our house just to generate electricity, and it's free electricity, why can't we?
Yeah. And the problem is now that we're getting our power from coal plants, and from fracking, natural gas. So two main resources, and of course for cars, we're talking about petroleum. And until you spend the money to build more nuclear power plants, and I don't know that many are coming online. A couple are, but and it takes maybe 5 to 8 years, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 10 years at least before you're going to have more power coming from nuclear power plants. And that's only assuming that the various agencies at the state and federal level approve these plans. So,
I think a lot has to do with the media reacting and hyping up these disasters that could have been prevented. We could easily throw up several power plants across the U.S. and have electricity for everyone, but there's such fear within society from media overhyping these things.
Two events put the kibosh because nuclear power plants were being built. I don't know how long this is ago. This predates Chernobyl. And they, for instance, New England, the New England Power Company was building a nuclear power plant. And then two things happened. You had Chernobyl, which scared the bejesus out of everybody. And in the United States, we had this leak at a place called 3 Miles Island.
Mm-hmm.
And that did it. That really killed the nuclear power plant industry in the United States. But man, we need something.
Yeah, and the recent one in Japan, it really hit the news pretty big, and they can find radiation particles, I guess, in fish that are coming up on shore in California. But there's radioactivity everywhere. It's sad that they built that power plant right there on the ocean. Yeah, there's ways to prevent those kind of disasters.
That could have been prevented many ways.
Absolutely.
I don't see. I can see at the grassroots level a lot of movement in solar power. People getting more solar panels. I've seen communities. There are now several communities built around solar power farms, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, you build you put the panels down, you get electricity going, and then you build the community around it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of movement at the low. Couldn't quite understand you, Yanni.
No, I couldn't.
Probably best if you could type in the chat area what you wanted to say, Yanni.
I think where we really went wrong was with hydroelectric and building these huge dams and diverting all of these rivers, and that really impacts the environment.
Well, you're talking about 40s, 30s, 40s?
40s, yeah.
Maybe even the 20s. When was Hoover Dam built? Well, when Hoover was president or afterwards, that was probably the 30s or 40s.
Well, they're still building them all over the world. I know there's a big one over in Africa that there's a big debate about.
Now we've got a link from Yanni. I will screen share for you. Got a big moose walking across a solar highway, laying down solar panels. Yes, solar panels everywhere. Solar panels on our cars.
I think that's genius. Making paint that's solar.
Solar highway, well, that is a very interesting idea, absolutely. And that's the kind of technology that we need to continue to work on, things like that. And well, if we get the battery for solar power, if we can get that battery so the more energy is stored and then can be generated overnight.
Yeah.
That would be a huge breakthrough.
That's the big problem, storing that energy, and just watch out. Once drones are solar powered, they'll never come down.
I think we're kind of stuck. I'm a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. I don't see where we're going to see significant reductions in our use of petroleum, our use of coal plants, our use of fracking. I don't see how that's going to be significantly reduced anytime in the next 5 years at least. We're looking at 10 years out. But hopefully it'll be more.
I did hear something yesterday. Someone was telling me that at least one of them, a synthetic oil for cars was made from natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can create oil from natural gas, then why couldn't we create a synthetic gasoline?
Mm-hmm. With natural gas, with fracking, a major issue is the amount of water that you use.
Right, the slurry.
The water becomes an issue. The amount of water that you need. Like in Texas, where they're having a drought, and yet a lot of people have they're extracting water from their property and selling it to the companies to use to get natural gas. At the same time, where you have a drought in some communities going away, they don't have enough water for farming or anything.
Sure, but this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, the Dust Bowl was a huge drought, but that's from agriculture. You know, there's always been droughts. It's hard to pinpoint just one thing that causes it, but we do know burning coal does make the atmosphere worse, and we're not really doing much about it.
It's not sustainable. Well, coal is sustainable for quite a while. We got huge coal reserves. Petroleum certainly not sustainable.
No.
Our United States Congress, and I'm going to guess the majority of the voters. Well, I can't say a majority of voters. I can't say that. I'll say the Republican Party. They believe that you can build new coal-fired plants that are much more environmentally safe, they claim. I don't know.
But there you are in almost 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
And we haven't built a new nuclear power plant in 40 years. Not 40 years. 20 years. 94?
Nuclear power is the best short-term solution because we can have plants up and running. I think last week it was Patrick, or maybe Christopher, they were talking about 5 to 8 years. Yeah. So by within 10 years, we could have enough nuclear power plants to generate power we need. And then you'd have that local solar power panels, and then the primary grid would be nuclear power plants.
Right. Well, I know Ulysses has brought up an issue with our power grid system and how it's not set up correctly, but yeah, we could eliminate all these coal plants that do generate a large majority of the electricity that we do consume.
Yeah. But there is actually good news. Good news on the... I had it. I just had it at my fingertips, guys. And now, here we go. New NASA images highlight U.S. air quality is improving. Unfortunately, 142 million people still live where air is polluted. And let me grab. I got to get better organized. Okay, well, screw it.
Animated.
There we go. You saved me there.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, so it's improving. And this is NASA. And anyone, let's see, after 10 years in orbit, the ozone monitoring instrument on NASA's Aurora satellite has been in orbit sufficiently long to show that people in major U.S. cities are breathing less nitrogen dioxide, a yellow-brown gas that causes respiratory problems. It's one of the 6 common pollutants regulated by the U.S. Environment Protection Agency to protect human health. Alone, it can impact the respiratory system, but also contains the formation of other pollutants, including ground-level ozone and particulates, which also carry adverse health effects. The gas is produced primarily during the combustion of gasoline in vehicle engines and in coal-powered plants. It's a good proxy for air pollution in general. Air pollution has decreased, even though pollution and the number of air pollution has decreased, even though pollution and the number of cars on the road have increased. The shift is the result of regulations, technological improvements, and economic change. However, 142 million people still live in areas in the United States with unhealthy levels of air pollution, according to the EPA. High levels of air pollution remain an issue in many parts of the world as well. So it's kind of a good news, bad news story.
Yeah, they have a before and after shot here. So it looks like things are improving.
Regulations can and do work. Technological improvements, obviously, are happening. But you also got to get the public itself behind reducing our dependence on coal-powered plants and less using of fracking for natural gas. And I kind of get the impression that maybe the majority of people don't. You see it in places like California. You see it, again, almost a Democratic-Republican issue, but it's also more of an aging issue. People over 40 and 50 probably say, you know, we don't really need these nuclear power plants. But the younger generation possibly is more supportive. No, I don't know. We're going to have to wait for a new generation of voters or something.
Right.
Or Elon Musk to the rescue. You know, man, if you can, like petroleum. Petroleum's a killer. We got to get rid of relying on petroleum. Makes no sense from an economic standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint. And so if we had electric charging stations, and you could get the cost of a Tesla-like car down from $75,000 down to $20,000 or $30,000, and you get those solar-powered. They have solar panels on top of them. Those charging stations. Elon Musk is doing a lot of it. He's building more and more. But you're still talking about a car that costs $75,000.
All right.
The potential is there, and if Musk can make enough money, and if he can get cities behind it, you can get California. I know in Oregon had a state program for building charging stations. I think charging stations for Tesla, and Patrick would know. I think, I don't know if they're compatible for all electric cars or if you have to use an adapter. The new ones, the new charging stations, you can charge up pretty, well, it's a battery swap. You can swap a battery very quickly. I think 5 minutes or something.
Well, I think it was a little bit longer than that. I thought it was like 20 minutes, but yeah, it's really quick.
to charge, well, let us look. Let us look. We have the power of the internet. So, let me pull. Now I'm going to look. What is it? Tesla.
I have a link right here.
Okay.
Charging. Plug in. Anywhere, seriously. Where there's an outlet, you can charge. That's just that. High power.
There we go. Tesla. Tesla supercharger. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're
Supercharger can replenish half of the battery in as little as 20 minutes. All Model S vehicles with the 85 kilowatt battery can use superchargers, as can properly equipped 60 kilowatt battery vehicles. Superchargers will be positioned at the convenient locations around major interstates.
the key is the battery swap. 90 seconds. If you click on, you have the supercharger link, you click on battery swap. And it shows you the Model S, designed to allow a fast battery swap. Full charge in 90 seconds. And there's a little video, demo video. So it's the battery swap, really, that's quick.
It says here you need to find an electrician. We recommend hiring an electrician to install your power outlet. Well, that's good. You don't want everyone fooling around with electricity.
That shows you what can be done. Well, what is reliance on petroleum costing us?
Mm.
You know?
The atmosphere?
Well, I mean, just on the fact that it's imported for the most part. Although we import it from Canada. We get most of our oil from Canada. They're friendly people, so I guess we're okay there.
But it's
not sustainable in the long run, anyway.
It's not. We have big reserves in Alaska, too.
But, the kind of nationwide charging station setup that Musk is trying with Tesla, the profits, just the profits. Green technology generates a lot of profits. And I think that's where, if most people, the vast majority of car owners, if they could get a fully electric car, 300 miles on a charge, and a charging station as close as any gasoline station, they'd do that in a heartbeat. Absolutely. It'd be cheaper for them, first of all.
Right. It's just the cost of getting the car. You know, you have to get that price down. It's so much cheaper just to go buy a $2,000 or $500 old car that runs off of gasoline.
Just think, you like sports cars.
Very much.
You like perhaps dragging people with sports cars. Just think if you had a solar-powered. Just think of the Tesla. Excuse me, that's the Tesla electric car. Instant combustion. Boom, it's gone. That'd be the perfect drag car.
It is, and I'm considering making one of my cars electric. It's just how far can you go? It's the battery weight that really limits you. You know, they weigh so much, and I know Tesla's working on new battery technologies that are going to vastly improve the efficiency of them. But I'd love to have an electric car. It'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'd get one, absolutely. The hybrids, the problem with the hybrids is, for instance, The Psiris, Toyota's car, it's a great little car, but you only get like 10, 15 miles out of a charge, and then you're going to be using, and then the gas tank kicks in. So you know what? Good for riding around town, but certainly you can't use it for long distance travel. You save a little bit, but not a heck of a lot. And with some of the electric cars, I don't think you get that great of a distance, battery life.
No, you don't. It's kind of like they've been deterring us from getting electric cars. You know, for one, they make them pretty expensive, and they don't go that far, and they're ugly. You know, a Tesla is the first car maker to make a really attractive electric car. You know, all these other ones have just been hideous looking, like something from the 70s.
Well, they are. Norway, I think, the most popular car in Norway is now an electric car. I forget which one it is. So, in Europe, you're perhaps seeing greater success, perhaps in Northern European countries, countries that are more concerned and really big on that environment. You're seeing, you know, buying more electric cars. The United States, it's going to take a car, as I say, where you can go 300 miles on it and be able to stop off at a charging station just like you would a gas station.
I don't think that'll be a problem here in the near future. It's much easier in Europe. They have such a good public transportation system, and the countries are very small, so you can have an electric car and, you know, go around your country pretty easy. Around here, we have such vast distances between the places we want to go, and I hope these super stations that Tesla's coming up with will be compatible with all cars.
I really only had one other story, which I can simply say will never defeat cancer. Cancer's going to be around. Cancer has been around. It's as old as multicellular life on Earth, and it will never be completely eradicated. This is research from KIEL University in Germany. Evolution started producing tumors. It's been an issue that scientists from the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Biology in Cologne have been investigating for several years using bioinformational methods and databases they developed in-house. During the search for the origin of the cancer gene, we unexpectedly made a discovery in an ancient group of animals. Our data predicted that the first multicellular animals already had most of the genes that can cause cancer in humans. What was missing until now was evidence that these animals can actually suffer from tumors, and the molecular understanding of the mechanism of tumor formation in these simple animals. We've discovered tumor-bearing polyps in 2 different species of hydra, an organism very similar to corals. The team also tracked down the cellular cause of the tumors along the entire body axis. For the first time, they were able to show that stem cells, which are programmed for sex determination, accumulate in large quantities and had not removed naturally by programmed cell death. Interestingly, these tumors affect only female hydropolyps and resemble ovarian cancer. The third finding of the scientists was to show that tumor cells are invasive. That means the tumor cells are introduced into a healthy organism and they trigger tumor growth there. The invasive characteristic of cancer cells is also an old evolutionary feature. So there you go.
Hydras. I remember learning about those in biology.
Hey, Hydra.
That's yeah, that's that. What's that? That's one of the bad guys in one of the Avengers series. Shield. The Shield, was it Hydra?
Yep.
Yes, Shield.
Came through clear.
The thing I have to wonder about is, since cancers and multicellular life have been around since the beginning, is there some kind of coevolution going on?
That's a good question. I don't know. We are mostly bacteria is what we're made up of, so are the bacteria that we have in our body, are they failing? Are they mutating? I don't know.
Well,
They should have balancing somehow. Has to.
yeah, we are developing, we have developed medication treatments for slowing down and, I would say, eradicating cancers in individuals. But as soon as it seems you develop a treatment, the cancers, which perhaps are a virus, are able to mutate. And so you have this, we come up with a treatment and then they evolve. Because they can mutate very, very quickly. And you can get a bazillion generations of viruses very, very quickly. Same thing bacteria, basically, too, which is what makes bacteria treatment so difficult to come up with. And of course, with our cancer treatment, so much of the time, you know, the cure is worse than the treatment is worse than the cure. And as I understand it, it isn't the primary cancer that kills most people. It's when it spreads. And what people die from is cancers that have spread throughout the body. If you're talking about dealing with it just at the primary site, you can deal with it very effectively. And it's not, if you can confine it to that one primary site before it spreads, you got a very good chance for a cure.
Yeah.
Getting feedback from somebody.
If you can catch it, that's great. But cancer is just an uncontrolled reproduction of cells, and yeah, there's a couple kinds of cancer, but it'd be wonderful if we knew what caused all these cancers.
Well, it's a virus, I think.
Well, it's something that sets off the instructions in our cells to start producing more cells, and
it's hijacking.
Right.
It's hijacking our cellular reproduction system. Whatever. We need Dale here. We need Dale. We need Patrick. We need Ulysses. But we'll struggle through. In any event.
Knowledge.
Now, on the other hand, we start talking about cars and energies, and AJ's right on the ball. We start talking about anything computers, and we got Yanni to help us out.
I'm a technology professional, too.
That's true.
Yeah. I can cover any subject you want to throw at me, I think. I just don't want to get into politics too much.
I love politics. That's, yeah, me and Ulysses can have all kinds of fun discussing politics.
It's a fun thing to talk about and debate. It's just, we really need long-term plans. Can't get interrupted every 4 years just because of party changes, and that's how things get halted, and we can't make progress.
It's boring and frustrating for most people. That's absolutely true.
And it seems pointless.
It's emotional. It's
Yeah.
very emotional. People taking sides, and then, you know, the Democrats, oh, those stupid Republicans, and the Republicans, oh, those damn hippie Democrats, blah, blah, blah. It's very emotional, which is why I love talking about it. Pushing people's buttons. No, I'd never do that.
Yeah. I'd just like to see this nation progress and the Earth as a whole start progressing, you know, and just switching back and forth every 4 to 8 years. They just keep stopping the programs that were started, and it seems to be hurting more than it's helping.
Yeah. But it's what we have right now is one party controlling one part of the house, one party controlling the other, and you get gridlock. I was originally what you would call a conservative Republican, going back into the 60s. And I believe strongly in that principle. Problems are best solved at the local level. And we're seeing that.
Right.
We're seeing in all kinds of issues, even homelessness. We're seeing solutions happening at the local level. And that's where I can be more optimistic. But unfortunately, there's some problems not being solved at the local level. The infrastructure, our country's infrastructure. No city's got the money to fix the infrastructure. And that's where you need a more proactive government. These nuclear power plants. Well, actually, the Republicans tend to favor nuclear power, I think. I think our friend Bush, I think he was all in favor of nuclear power.
Yeah, that's odd, since he's an oil man.
He's a businessman. You know? Money. You know, power plants generate money. So he was probably right. We'd be better off with him as president in that regard than... I don't want to say the name. I don't want to get people upset with me. Yeah, it's I don't know. Oh well, I am all out. What do you want to talk about? Anything, AJ?
Maybe next week we can talk about the Light Cell 1 mission that's happening out in California. Planetary Society is hosting an event on the 7th, I believe, and they're going to launch a light sail that's going to be visible to everyone on Earth.
Really? A light sail?
A real light sail.
A very thin sail that doesn't weigh much, or a sail full of lights, light bulbs or something?
A way to travel, you know, beyond Earth and to other stars, you know, just using the power of the sun.
That's exciting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, next week I won't be having a hangout. It's going to be the 4th of July weekend. Don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm sure it'll involve burnt meat somewhere. But you have any plans, AJ, for?
Oh, I'm really close on my car, so I'm really putting a lot of energy into that. No big plans just as of yet, but I wouldn't mind some charred meat myself.
Alright. Jani, I don't know if you have any big national holiday. I'm sure you must in Finland, but I don't know if you have fireworks. Fireworks are always fun. We have big fireworks display.
You might set off some fireworks in Star Wars or something.
Big holiday. What is midsummer holiday? What?
Midsummer?
Yep.
Midsummer holiday. That's a great time to have a party.
Yeah.
4th of July. Forget about those. Well, I don't know.
Midnight sun.
People.
Even.
Sorry. I'm sure the Finns in Northern...
in the night.
Yeah.
Lots of lights during the night, so.
And not so much for winter holidays, but summer holidays, 2 thumbs up. All right, guys. My brain is beginning to fry.